You know it's fake, right? I'm sure you've heard that question a lot in your time as a wrestling fan. It's one of those things that non-fans say to us to try and ruin it for us. You know, at best, it makes you laugh, you roll your eyes. At worst, it pisses you off. It's a very stupid line. But what if I told you that wrestling fans have been doing this themselves for years? Just the wording's a little different. See, when outsiders want to ruin it for us, they say, you know it's fake, right? But when fans do it, they say, it's a work. Today's wrestling fan is more cynical than ever, but how did it get to this point? Who's to blame for this? Over the last couple of weeks, I heard this uttered a lot, that Eva Marie's wellness suspension is a work. I mean, it has to be, right? It has to be part of a storyline, because after all, her whole gimmick at this point has just been avoiding wrestling at all costs, so of course they're going to give her this 30-day suspension to keep her off TV for a longer time. It's brilliant, right? Totally a work. I heard this a lot when Roman Reigns got suspended too. People were like, well, obviously the company felt the need to suspend him so they could garner sympathy for him so he comes back at Battleground to a hero's welcome. But aside from the fact that that plan is totally counterintuitive and idiotic, ask yourself this, dear viewers. When in the illustrious 10-year history, yes, 10 years of the WWE wellness policy, has any suspension ever been a work? When has a drug suspension ever been part of the storyline for WWE? At best, they tap danced around the Roman Reigns issue for Battleground. And yeah, him being gone didn't really help the build either. Besides the very coincidental timing of Eva Marie's suspension, when has a wellness violation ever been convenient for a wrestler or the company? Besides Jeff Hardy, Randy Orton, or Rey Mysterio, who's ever had a wellness suspension and done well for themselves afterward? There's no such thing as wellness violations being selectively fake, no matter how much some fans want to believe that's true. How can some suspensions be real and others not be real? If Eva Marie's suspension is in fact a work, then how come Paige and Alberto Del Rio's aren't works? They got suspended around the same time as Eva Marie, and nobody's calling those out for being fake. I can name you dozens of other wrestlers who've been suspended in the past, in the last 10 years that the policy has been in place, and none of those were works. None of those impacted the storyline in a positive way. They were not part of the story. People like Adam Rose, William Regal, Mr. Kennedy, Booker T, Edge, Chavo Guerrero, Hornswoggle, the list goes on. Here's why a wellness suspension never could, should, or would be a work. First of all, it hurts the wrestler. Not only does it take them off TV, not only do they not get paid, it hurts their image. Either the fans that they have sour on them, or the people who don't like them to begin with have more ammunition. Second, and perhaps most importantly, the entire wellness policy was developed as a response to the death of Eddie Guerrero. It's a tool the company uses to help find out which of their stars might be using and abusing substances and intervening so another Eddie Guerrero story doesn't happen. If the company were to trivialize the very real and very important matter of drug use and abuse in professional wrestling by incorporating a drug suspension into a storyline where nothing really is real, it would make everything counterintuitive. It'd be a bad look for the whole company. It wouldn't benefit anyone. If they wanted to write somebody off TV for a non-drug reason, they'll find a way to do it. They just wouldn't use wellness as an excuse. I think some fans respond to stories like that saying it's a work as this knee-jerk reaction because we as fans don't want to feel like we've been tricked or fooled by professional wrestling. Wrestling as a whole, in terms of its presentation, everything is like staged or predetermined or fake, whatever you want to call it. So nobody wants to feel they're caught in a lie or believing a lie by professional wrestling. So in the odd chance that something they don't believe in is proven to be a work, we can all cross our arms in smug satisfaction and say, well, they didn't fool me. I think it's a byproduct of the feedback loop that is pro wrestling in the information age. You know, over the years, fans have come to know almost everything there is to know about professional wrestling and how it's run, from tell-all investigative books and dirt sheets and shoot interviews and things like that. And now, over the last several years, wrestling is responding to that by incorporating more reality into their storylines. Over the years, we've seen Vince Russo shoot on Hulk Hogan at Bash at the Beach. We've seen the Edge, Matt Hardy, Lita love triangle. We've seen Joey Styles quitting Raw, CM Punk's pipe bomb, Aaron Rex's promo on Impact when he debuted, The Miz's promo on Talking Smack, not to mention every other worked shoot promo you've ever heard. And who could forget the Triple H Stephanie McMahon marriage, which has gone on for years and has created all this fan backlash over such a long time. It led to The Authority, which constantly blurred the lines. So mainstream wrestling tries to get more real with its content because fans are in on the act. That makes sense, that's acceptable, but it's not enough for them to incorporate reality into the storylines. Sometimes they'll take things that are inherently fake, obviously fake, and try and give you a hard sell that it's real. WWE in particular have insulted our intelligence many times by incorporating the "this is real" voice. You know what I'm talking about. Some big spot like a car crash or a table spot happens on Raw, and they come back from commercial break and the announcer's speaking this very hushed, this is very serious right now kind of tone of voice. The same tone of voice that Jim Ross had the night Owen Hart died. So yeah, I get why some fans will say it's a work. But at the same time, on the flip side of that, doesn't constantly having to remind yourself that wrestling is predetermined, that ongoing skepticism and cynicism, doesn't that wear on you as a fan over time? If the goal of every fan is to be entertained, then how can we be? How can we care when nothing in wrestling is really at stake? How can we be genuinely surprised when we're always peeking back behind the curtain and yet still denying the validity of the real stuff? I mean, I'm guilty of this too. Nobody's immune. It happens to everybody. So what's really to blame for all this cynicism? Is it the fans getting too wise or the industry getting too cute by blurring the lines? Sure, back in 1989, Vincent Mann went to the New Jersey State Senate and said that wrestling was predetermined. But the Wrestling Observer came out in 1982, and people have been calling wrestling fake since the 40s. I think the problem really lies in the fact that wrestling, and WWE in particular, likes to have their cake and eat it too. They're incorporating all these pseudo-realistic storylines and characters into their shows, but at the same time they also delve into the weird and wacky shit, the things that are very memorable, but ultimately completely unbelievable. Can they have both? I don't really think they can. But you can't have everything be reality based on a show, because otherwise it becomes meta and super boring. Honestly, if WWE came out tomorrow and said everything is going to be super wacky, it's going to be a big cartoon circus again, we're just going to have these outlandish, wild characters coming at you in a non-stop barrage, everything's in a bubble, nothing realistic about it, I would honestly be okay with that. But of course we can't have that, because even though professional wrestling is this bizarre hybrid of acting and athletics and politics with crazy superheroes and storylines and villains and crazy characters and stuff like that, at the end of the day, it's still grounded in reality, and that reality is augmented and amplified by the information age. Stories like Eddie Guerrero and Brock Lesnar's recent doping allegations and the dozens of wrestlers who have violated the wellness policy over the last decade have proven that the actions of those wrestlers have consequences in the real world that affect the fantasy. But that never-ending fantasy of professional wrestling has led to some fans willfully denying or ignoring those consequences simply because they don't want to get fooled again. But in my opinion, that kind of disbelief is flat out hurting the fan experience. However, the industry is going to take that disbelief and they're going to keep using it as a weapon to keep blurring the lines and making fans question what's a shoot and what's a work, and the cycle will continue. It's a vicious cycle, and unfortunately, one that I don't see ending anytime soon. What do you think, fans? How did this cynicism begin, and how can we as fans and the industry work together to end it? Let me know in the comments section below. I'm Zane, and I'll see you next time.